So the music business is changing. Any musician who doesn't know this is probably living under a rock, and it continues to change. It feels like the goalposts are being moved every other week. We are certainly in the midst of a digital media revolution that is exciting, but also kind of scary. Digital streaming services are overtaking broadcast network and cable television. Social media has become the hub of advertising, and artificial intelligence and machine learning are on the brink of transforming nearly every aspect of society. So how do we musicians, producers, composers, and songwriters adapt, find our footing, and our future amidst these changing times? Okay, so societal innovation has affected us before, historically. The key is not to let the anxiety and the fear overtake us. Change is sometimes not easy, but change we must, and we all should be aware of how well humans have always adapted to change. Hey, my name is John DeFaria. Welcome to my studio here in Culver City, California. I've been licensing my music for the past 25 years, and to date I've had over 10,000 music licensing placements. I'd like to show you the techniques I've learned to become more successful at licensing and placing your music in television, film, and video game productions. By the end of this video, I hope you'll get a clearer understanding of where we're headed in 2026 and how that relates to the way you run your business. So let's begin with the elephant in the room, AI-generated music. AI music platforms like SUNO and Udio are already becoming a tool for songwriters and composers, which is a good thing, the tool part that is. They are far from replacing us as composers and songwriters for sync. Let me explain why. You generally cannot copyright the music you generate on SUNO as though it's an original human-created composition. Even though SUNO's platform grants you rights to use and exploit the music it generates while you're on the paid plan, the output is still a license. You can't claim copyright ownership in a way that prevents others from creating similar content independently. So what does this mean in the sync world? If you're working on music for a show, the production company usually has you sign an agreement stating you are the copyright owner, and you agree to license your music to them for a specified time and area of the world. If you don't own the copyright, this is impossible to do. If you're signing a work for hire agreement, this usually means the production company retains ownership of the copyright and publishing rights. This is impossible for them to do given the current SUNO agreement. Current copyright law states that purely AI-generated works are not eligible for copyright simply because there is not enough human authorship involved. If the music and lyrics are entirely generated by SUNO with zero human input, you can't register the work for copyright protection. If human performance is added to the AI-generated song, it does become eligible for copyright protection. So let's say you're using AI more as a tool, more like letting it generate ideas like chords or melody lines, and then adding your own ideas as well. Maybe you're adding human vocals and or instruments to the track and changing up melody and lyric ideas. This would make the song more copyright eligible. However, there is something that still bothers me. If someone else tries to generate a similar song on SUNO, it might spit out something way too similar to what it generated for you. This, for me, is a red flag. I would be very nervous signing a licensing agreement on material that could have easily been used elsewhere. I can assume that a production company understanding this issue would be nervous as well. Remember, the media company you're working for is just as concerned about truly original copyrightable material as you are. That's why composers and songwriters keep a clear distance from the sample library SPLICE. SPLICE's license is non-exclusive and subscription-based, which makes lawyers twitchy, and rightly so. The same can be said for SUNO, which is also subscription-based. I'm sure you're well aware of how much music lawyers want ownership and copyright clearly spelled out and buttoned up in any film or TV show they're working on. So how do we spell this out for you folks creating music for media? The honest answer is AI will probably eat into some entry-level composing jobs. Mid-career composers who adapt will survive. High-end composers will thrive. Those who refuse to adapt will probably struggle. In my opinion, using AI as the sole music generator will ultimately lead to lots of headaches. But that's just me speaking. If you're okay with hazy ownership rules and unoriginality, so be it. By adding human authorship, the music becomes copyrightable. To me, this is a much safer route for broadcasters. If you, as a composer-songwriter, try to out-cheap AI, you will not win. Position yourself more from a place of value, originality, and authorship. Remember, studios are very interested in possible PRO publishing backend, sync longevity, and international distribution. They want all future options open to them. Remember that you can deliver clean human authorship and defensible copyright. Those are important aspects AI cannot deliver on. Sure, you can utilize AI in your workflow. It can help you with rough sketches, harmonic ideas, alternate moods, but then you can recompose, reharmonize, perform, arrange, and replace melodies. AI becomes your assistant, not your replacement. Now let me delve into another important shift that is ongoing. No doubt streaming media is slowly but surely replacing broadcast media. This is having a deep impact on how composers and songwriters are making a living. Traditionally, performance royalties have been paid out to writers and publishers operating in the broadcast world. The royalty tier system is completely different in the streaming medium. Exposure on a major streaming platform often sounds more impressive than it pays. If your music lands on a Netflix television show, you might feel like celebrating. But if that same placement aired on network or cable TV instead, you might be making a lot more money. Let's talk about why. There are three main revenue streams when your music appears on broadcast: a sync fee, upfront license, performance royalties, public performance income, back-end and residual structures, sometimes like mechanical royalties, neighboring rights. The difference between broadcast and streaming television is mainly in number two, performance royalties. In number one, the sync fee is negotiated upfront. It is mainly a negotiated settlement and has no standard rate. Number two, performance royalties is where broadcast television shines. When a show airs on NBC, CBS, FX, HBO, Bravo, your PRO like ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC collect royalties from that broadcaster. Broadcast television pays based on audience size, time of day the show airs, network weight, queue duration. A primetime network placement can generate substantial performance royalties, especially when it plays multiple times. Broadcast and traditional cable still often generate stronger PRO payouts per airing than streaming. Platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Hulu can have comparable sync fees as broadcast television, but in performance royalties, there's a big difference. Streaming services are treated differently than broadcasters. PRO payouts are generally lower per viewer equivalent. They're not based on number of streams of your song. They're based on platform revenue models and negotiated blanket licenses. Many composers report a broadcast airing can outperform a streaming episode financially. Streaming payments can feel compressed compared to broadcast. Streaming does not have a traditional ad-based performance structure. There is no standard rate card like in broadcast. Video platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video operate on negotiated licensing deals. There is no public rate sheet. There is no standard per-view payout. Every deal is customized. Streaming, unlike broadcast, isn't a vending machine. It's a negotiation. So while the sync fee might be similar, the back-end performance money can look very different. In fact, many composers will tell you one strong network rerun can outperform months of streaming exposure. Streaming changed how we watch TV. It also changed how composers get paid. And if you're placing music today, you need to understand both ecosystems. If you're placing music in 2026, your job isn't to chase exposure, it's to understand where the back end actually lives. So how are composers and songwriters reacting to the new streaming era? Back when broadcast was king, composers were more apt to accept lower upfront work for higher fees, knowing that depending on the success of the show they were working on, their performance royalty payments could be quite substantial. Of course, in the streaming era, we're seeing agreements shifting to higher upfront fees as protection against less back-end payments in the future. Composers are also restructuring their deals in other ways. We're seeing composers negotiating for more general ownership of the music, like retaining a percentage of publishing. owning possible soundtrack rights, licensing deals instead of work-for-hire agreements. These days, score music can have other lives beyond the show that they were written for. They can be part of playlists on streaming platforms, and they can have licensing reuse on other forms of media. Current streaming episodic shows usually have only 6 to 10 episodes versus the broadcast model of at least 22 shows. We're seeing composers negotiate for bigger per episode fees, minimum guarantees per season, and charging for extra themes and sonic identity. Composers are also sometimes charging rush fees, overtime clauses, additional music revision fees. These services used to be informal. Now we're seeing them being written into deals. Because back end is weaker, career value matters more. Agreements increasingly include prominent credit placements, social media tagging, IMDb positioning, and marketing participation. We are also seeing advocacy work from music organizations like the Society of Composers and Lyricists, who are pushing for fairer streaming residual models, better transparency, and minimum compensation standards. With streaming media becoming the new normal, there seems to be a different scenario happening overseas as far as performance royalty payouts go. I would say the last several years, I've seen very good international performance on my royalties. I'm wondering if other composers watching have too. Well, based on my research, there is a reason for this, especially in Europe. International markets still treat streaming more like broadcast, so performance royalties flow much better overseas. However, in the US, streaming platforms like Netflix are not classified the same as broadcasters. Many uses of that music are treated as direct licenses or bundled deals, which result in lower and less frequent payouts. The result, US composers get less back end from streaming shows here in the States versus overseas. In other countries, Europe especially, streaming still is viewed as a public performance, and streaming platforms' music must pay performance royalties to their respective performance rights organizations like PRS for Music in the UK, SACEM in France, and GEMA in Germany. These collection agencies operate similar to our US organizations like ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. This means that every stream triggers a performance royalty and payments flow more like traditional TV reruns. International territories have stronger creator protection laws, require equitable remuneration, and limit the ability to fully buy out rights. In Europe, you often cannot waive certain royalties. In the US, you often can. The bottom line is these days, performance royalties are better internationally because streaming is legally treated as a public performance. Royalty rights are often non-waivable. PRO systems are more centralized, and protective governments prioritize creator compensation. So for US composers, that's a hard pill to swallow. But as I mentioned earlier, this is why everyone I know is seeing a difference in their international versus domestic royalty statements. So what is the composer-songwriter survival strategy for 2026? In my view, it is to be knowledgeable about the changing nature of our industry and how to shift negotiating tactics moving forward. In this video, I've tried to address the most pressing issues challenging our careers in 2026 and the common sense, matter-of-fact ways we can navigate through them. I believe it's critical for every composer and songwriter to be fully informed with the correct information so they know more accurately what's at stake and can negotiate with more confidence. After all, this is the music business. I also believe in 26 we need each other more than ever. This is quite an upheaval we're going through, and I do believe our advocacy will be critical for the next few years. The good news is that information moves faster than ever, and we can all stay informed and engaged much easier than 30 years ago. My message in this video has been focused on some of the major challenges we face, but I am also very optimistic for the future of our profession. There are also a lot of opportunities I am seeing, which I'd like to cover at a later date. The music industry has changed for sure, but it will keep on changing, and we need to do everything in our power to influence that change in the most positive way for our profession.